AMC presents an illuminating portrait of a legendary actor.
I think I've probably been pretty cavalier about the advice that I've gotten. I should have listened to more of it.
In his last recorded interview.
Like most and many actors, I'm very, very critical of my work, but I must admit I've made an awful lot of films. That's just how it is.
This revealing look at Anthony Perkins on Professor Richard Brown's Reflections on the Silver Screen. Coming up next on AMC.
As a youngster, you hitchhiked out to Hollywood, and you went in to do almost as a favor to do a reading, but you weren't reading for a part. You were reading the other person's lines.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the movie The Actress.
Mm-hmm.
And George Cukor saw you, and he just said, "I want that man," and that was your first part, that was your first film.
Well, that's a slightly glamorized version of it. Not to make a long story out of it, but I had played this role in Summer Stock, the role of Gene Simmons' boyfriend. I had played it in a professional company, you know, where people had to pay 75 cents or $1 to get in and see it. So I figured if I could just go out there and tell them that would give them, they would say, "Oh, you've played the part already? Well, you've had experience, so we'll give it to you."
Sign here.
Yeah, sign here, exactly. But it didn't quite work out that way. They were interested. "Oh, yeah, really? Well, you know, leave us a picture, kid, and we'll get in touch with you." But as it turned out, they were making a test, just as more or less as you've described it, with an actress, and they said, "Oh, there, you know, there's that kid that came around last week and said he'd play the part. Why don't we ask him to do it? And that way we don't have to get anybody from contract, which would mean maybe taking them off a picture or something like that." So I inadvertently was engaged to come in and read lines, really, for Margaret O'Brien, who was being tested for the role, and Cukor saw me there, and I figured this part was mine. They may be testing Margaret O'Brien, but I figured they were going to turn around and do a shot of me too.
But it sort of is a tribute to the power of positive thinking.
Oh, no question about it. The power of self-confidence, which I think one way or another all actors have. I love that. I was watching an early film of Sidney Poitier's. He is giving his performance, the same intensity, the same skillfulness that he gives now. I mean, he was born with it. He had the confidence to go in and promote it, do it, and succeed in it. He had it in his first film.
If that's the case, and I very much believe it is, that the great actors have a persona that they create on stage, and then they work and they fine-tune it for the character. They move it a little bit in one direction or another.
Exactly.
How, if I may ask, how would you define the Tony Perkins persona?
It changed in 1960 with Psycho. With Psycho, suddenly I'd abandoned being the young leading man and became the slightly quirky, slightly nervous, tick-ridden juvenile. That was just one of those overnight things. And as so many reviews have said about Psycho, it was too good. The part was too well written. The performance was too well directed by Hitchcock, and I think it left a lasting impression on moviegoers who were more interested in seeing me in roles like that than in anything else.
When I look back, what I see is an enormous enthusiasm for you. There's this man from Paramount who said, "Well, we've invested $15 million in this kid, and we put him into 5 pictures, and it better click." And let me tell you, he said, this guy clicked.
Well, of course, the tragedy of that was all 5 pictures were lousy. He was the personal producer of 2 of them, which were absolutely indefensibly bad. It was very, very sad for this guy. The 2 films that he produced were Desire Under the Elms and The Matchmaker.
Did you know that going in? Did you look at it and say, this isn't going to work?
Well, in the case of Desire Under the Elms, which is a play about owning property and the greed and the lust for property and the security that owning property gives you, when you consider they shot it not on the Paramount backlot but actually in a soundstage, it seemed a little inappropriate to me.
Yeah. And that was a 1958 film.
Yeah.
You were directed by Delbert Mann.
Charming guy, yeah.
It was interesting to me in terms of the whole Perkins body of work, because it was the first time, I think, that you did serious love scenes on screen. Was that rough for you to do that under the lights, under the camera? Was that a toughie?
Well, Sophia Loren, who played the girl, was so adorable and so nice, and she had such a sense of humor about herself and about all kinds of scenes that actually it wasn't that difficult. She just wasn't an uptight girl, that's all. She was so happy to be in Hollywood. She just had a big success with A Boy on a Dolphin. Actually, it wasn't a big success, but for her, it was a huge success. She had a huge Paramount contract. She was just about getting ready to be married to Carlo Ponti, and she had such a good time that it was very difficult to appear in scenes with her and not enjoy it.
You mentioned films that were disappointing to you. Let me mention a couple of films that I don't think were disappointments to you. Certainly, the audiences loved them.
Well, okay. Well, that's important, of course. I realize I'm, like most and many actors, I'm very, very critical of my work, but I'm not impossible. When there's a scene in a film or even an entire film that it seems to still have vitality and authenticity, I think I can see that. I'm not just, it's just not a blanket no, but I must admit I've made an awful lot of lousy films. That's just how it is. I mean, it just worked out that way.
But you made Friendly Persuasion.
Friendly Persuasion, you'd really be churlish to find an enormous amount of fault with that. That's just one of those films which lives on. It wasn't that it was so innovatively directed. It wasn't that the story was so original. It was just one of those successful films in which I had a marvelous role. Gary Cooper was marvelously cast in the role. It was just one of those marvelous and enduring films which will always have a certain amount of interest. So I'm grateful for that film.
Do you remember the scene in this film where you are talking to your parents and you explain that you have to enlist?
That scene started about 9:30 in the morning, and by 1 o'clock, the unions at that time declared that we had to go to lunch right in the middle of the scene, just before my close-up. And Weiler came to me and he said, I'm really sorry about this. You're doing a fabulous job, and I want you to hold on to this if you possibly can. Why don't you go back to your room and sort of concentrate and reread the script? I'm very, very sorry. We'll start again in an hour. Well, I went to the commissary and had 2 cheeseburgers and a malted, and came back, sat down, and just started over again. I didn't have the self-consciousness as an actor to find that would be a difficult thing to do. So since I didn't think it was going to be difficult, it wasn't.
One reason why it might have been difficult is that for the close-up, in order for it to match the long shot or the master, you needed to replicate exactly what you had done earlier.
But youth, youth can do anything. I mean, who wrote, I just read it, youth is a time to walk around clothed in rainbows. I mean, when you're that age, nothing bothers you. Nothing bothers you. The idea of replicating a feeling or an idea, even after 2 cheeseburgers and a malted, it didn't strike me as something that was going to be, difficult and soul-searching, and how will we ever find it again? It didn't occur to me. Appropriateness for this job, that they thought I was doing it right.
Norman.
Right.
But that was 20 years ago.
22.
The Psycho films, in fact, were responsible for my ongoing identifiability. This first sequel and the subsequent sequels, I think, have kept me in the public eye, so I have nothing to complain about.
You worked with another man who thought very highly of you, who, again, did the same thing that you did in Psycho 3. He acted in it, he starred in it, it's his vehicle, and he directed it. And that was Orson Welles.
But his knowledge, his technical knowledge of editing and cutting and camera movements was consummate. He knew most of it. He knew almost all of it, and he hadn't forgotten it from the days in which he was making films more frequently than he did when we made The Trial.
When you played Joseph K. in that film, what was your sense of Welles?
Well, we spent 16 hours together every day, 7 days a week. We got up in our respective hotel suites and met for breakfast and drove to the set together with my car following empty just behind. We spent the day together on the set. We walked off and had lunch together at a little restaurant nearby. We spent the afternoon together. We had dinner together, and then we went out night clubbing and drinking, him, not me, until the wee hours of the morning. So there was a synthesis of people there that was very, very strong, much stronger than the movie. I think the movie is a bit of a mess.
Did Wells also share that thought, or were you too thick into the production for him to think about how it would cut together?
I don't know what went on in his head, but the concept of a guilty Joseph K., a sort of obsequious and weak hero, seemed very antithetical to the spirit of Kafka's book and to the other dramatizations of it that had been done by, principally by Jean-Louis Barrault in the French theater. After a couple of days of shooting, I mentioned to Orson, I said, you know, don't you think it's maybe going to be interpreted that Joseph K. is guilty? He said he is guilty. He's guilty as hell. And I thought, well, okay. And as now, I believe in the authenticity of the director's vision, and I will do anything to make it come true.
Your dad was a major matinee idol in this country, and he did films, he did silent films, worked on the stage.
Films, yeah.
But from what I've read, you really don't remember him.
No, I don't have a strong memory of him. He was marvelous in a couple of films, which really do live on. For the time, his style of acting was quite advanced, quite modern. He has a good role in the Paul Muni Scarface,
yes.
And he's marvelous in that. He really is. It's inspiring to see him.
Years ago, you wrote that you knew that your dad, that everybody loved your dad, and they would talk about Osgood with such
that was
affection,
a tough one.
and that, you know, in a way that was a resistance for you and it sort of distanced you. But eventually, it sounded to me like that was one of the reasons why you decided to do this, or to embrace acting as a profession.
I embraced acting as a profession because he had a lot of scripts left over in our apartment when I was growing up, when I was 10, 11, and 12, and I would read these scripts and read the dialogue out loud, and it didn't seem that difficult to make sense out of spoken dialogue. It seemed you could read both parts, or either part, or one part instead of another, and it was easy for me to make sense out of a line of dialogue. You know, it sounds like an easy thing to do, and for many actors it is, but many other actors have a tremendous amount of difficulty. They do finally get it right, especially theater actors, but dialogue on the page doesn't look right to certain people. For me, it isn't difficult.
Yeah. What do you think the toughest thing about acting is?
Trying to realize that it's something that really can't be defined. You can't put a dictionary definition on acting. And the more people try, the more confusing it gets. You know, there are so many schools of acting, and so many books written about acting, and so many theories about acting, and so many ways of teaching acting. It's all a little confusing.
In 1974, you did a film with Sidney Lumet called Murder on the Orient Express. That was a great ensemble piece. Very often, these ensemble pieces end up not working out very well. This one worked very well indeed.
I think one of the reasons that film worked so well is that Sidney Lumet wisely and brilliantly disdained to become interested and involved in the actors' personal gripes with each other and with the script. He wouldn't even listen to it. He said, look, I'm far too busy, work it out, to go to lunch, have a drink, take 5, and he just went ahead and did his film the way he saw it, that he wanted to do. This is very, very difficult for some directors to do. They adopt the role of father confessor and a fixer of all things, and if Sidney on the first day had gotten involved in the personality conflicts that were imminent in that picture, I think it would have wrecked it. And he wasn't interested. He had a huge production which was going to be difficult to mount at best, and he just said, forget it.
It sounds to me like he ended up instituting a policy that sort of protected himself and maybe made sure that the film was going to get done and was going to get finished.
He gave himself that policy so that the actors would have to fend for themselves, and they did.
Well, Mother.
What do you think has been the best advice that you've ever gotten, if I may ask, over all of these years?
It seems to me that people have been trying to give me advice ever since I started in show business, and I don't think as a young actor I paid much attention to it, and as a middle-aged actor I figured I was too smart to need it. So I think I've probably been pretty cavalier about the advice that I've gotten. I should have listened to more of it.
Yeah. What has been the most satisfying thing for you in the business, do you think? The thing that's given you the most pleasure in all these years of acting and working with all the people who...
The fact that I'm still here. You know, there are an awful lot of actors in the 50s that just disappeared. By the 60s, they were already forgotten. And the fact that I'm still working, still alive, and still productive means more to me than anything.